The 56th annual meeting of the World Economic Forum in Davos kicks off this week under the theme, A Spirit of Dialogue. The US is sending its largest ever delegation, raising questions about the country's commitment to multilateralism. We are also tracking developments around the extension of the African Growth and Opportunity Act, or AGOA. Now, the US House of Representatives has backed an extension, but South Africa's future participation remains unclear. Joining us to unpack the geopolitical and economic significance of these developments is Economist Professor Miriam Altman. Prof, thank you so much for your time and a very good morning to you. So the US is sending its largest ever delegation to Davos this year, yet many critics argue that this platform seems more aligned with US interests than genuine multilateralism. What does this disparity reveal about the true purpose of the WEF in the current geopolitical climate?
Look, the reality is that, G20 was a tough one for the US because they couldn't dominate it. It was fundamentally bringing countries together who operate in an equal way. The WEF is more of a dialogue forum. By its essence, it's a dialogue forum. The US had been not very involved, actually, for many years. It's been more of a space for emerging markets in the previous years. And now I guess Trump feels that this is a location where, they can dominate the event. So what I understand is that they're bringing something like 600 delegates to an event that might house 3,000 people, as an example.
Yeah. And I mean, given the US's history of unilateral actions, imposing tariffs or withdrawing from multilateral agreements, what does then this message bring in bringing over 600 people in terms of that heavyweight presence at Davos sent to small economies like South Africa?
Well, there's no history of doing those tariffs. It's the past couple of years. And, we know that the US has pulled out of something like 66 international organizations. About half of those are UN agencies and about maybe 33 multilateral agencies. So, and that means the funding of those agencies is dramatically reduced. Humanitarian support we saw has dramatically reduced. We were hit with the whole PEPFAR story, dramatically affecting our HIV/AIDS health programs. Trump is very clear about what his agenda. The one thing you've got to say about him, he's very clear about what his intention is. And, that is America first, do everything by force, white supremacy. We don't like migrants. We don't like diversity. We're going to use tariffs as a key economic tool. I'm an economist. That's just crazy, but that's what he wants to do. I think he's shooting himself in his foot. He's driving national agendas. That means everybody's got to get parochial. It means that bilateralism is going to now be key. It means that regions are key, which is why, he wants to take over Greenland and so forth. For Africa, for South Africa, the point is that the US is obviously sidelining South Africa, that he's getting away with not including South Africa in the G20 in 2026, and nobody's particularly seems to be fighting him on it, and pretty much tells you everything. Maybe this is a passing thing. Having said that, I've been calling around actually, because obviously, like many people monitoring this thing, this may become more entrenched, that this may not pass through. This is this kind of rise of alt-right movements, of parochialism, of not focusing on national interest versus multilateralism, of taking by force fake news and undermining of frankly legitimate media sources may continue. And that's the biggest fear. So WEF coming together, now America's not dominating everything. So you've got a lot of good people who are there. Secretary General of the UN is there. Some of the key intellectuals and companies and interests, and not every single meeting at WEF is going to be dominated by Donald Trump. So it is still good that people come together and dialogue and discuss. But multilateralism has been given a heavy bullet.
And it certainly has, Prof, and especially with the trust in global institutions fading. What do you think then is the risk for economies such as South Africa and our sovereignty and our economic independence when major powers like the US actively shape such agendas at these gatherings?
Well, you know, I think it's going to get countries to be thinking a lot more about sovereignty. So even like with PEPFAR, you know, we probably could fund those programs, and I guess we will. So I think it gets a lot of particularly African countries to say, well, I guess we can't trust that aid. We better get our act together. It does drive the Africa regional trade that we should be doing anyway, but it certainly makes an understanding that South Africa's role in Africa needs to be dramatically stronger. I mean, that was true anyway, but I hope that it drives that message more forcefully because regions do matter, actually. South Africa should be driving growth in the region, which it doesn't. And so hopefully we will up our game in relation to that. I don't think it destroys our sovereignty. It may strengthen, actually, our perception of it. The problem that arises is, you know, we may not be included in AGOA, and that's the tip of the iceberg of the problem. You know, actually, America is not a big trade partner in relation to our manufactured goods where it matters. Where this matters is that there's an expectation by the IMF, by the World Bank, by the WEF surveys of its companies of slower global growth, uncertainty in supply chains, slowing investment, rising inflation. These are much bigger problems for South Africa because we are dramatically affected by global demand and global trends because we're such a small open economy. So those things matter much more for us. And then in this whole world of uncertainty and rising conflict, the fall in multilateral agencies is actually quite a big problem. Now, those agencies were weakening, which has been a problem, and they have been losing confidence. There's no doubt about it, but they needed to be strengthened. We dramatically, more than ever, particularly with the growth of AI across the world and the cyber insecurity, the dominance of these companies, uncertainty of information and disinformation, which is a key issue at WEF this year. That importance of cross-border cooperation is just so important now.
So with that said, Prof, in relation to AGOA, how then should South Africa respond to this conditional extension of AGOA?
Well, firstly, we've got to up our game in Africa just generally. That really is our sweet spot's going to be getting logistics moving in Africa. That really is where our future should be. And we're frankly just not driving it the way we should. Having said that, we don't have an ambassador in the U.S. You know, Alistair Raiders is, you know, helping, but we don't have the kind of economic diplomatic capability in our key markets. That includes China, that includes the U.S. We've got to do something about that. We've got to be investing much more significantly in building institutional capability, including those relationships. By the way, that also includes key markets in Africa, that we've juniorized that capability, and we've really got to take it a lot more seriously. So our relationship, we're not investing it in the way we should.
Most certainly.
So we need to get moving.
We certainly need to get moving. We need to also just shape our strategies in order to create a more resilient economy for South Africa and for Africa as a whole. Prof, thank you so much for your time. That's economist Professor Miriam Altman.